We're glad you could join us today for episode 5, season 1 of Podcast Laredo. I'm Tony Alvarado, and I am here with my co host, Fernando Montemayor. We want to thank you for viewing and listening to us. Podcast Laredo is about sharing the history, the culture, and traditions of the greater Laredo area and beyond. We do this by engaging in conversations with trailblazers who offer insights into their unique professional journey, life story, background, and they are able to communicate with us how their life choices got them to where they are today. We have a very distinguished guest, the Honorable Elma Salinas Ender, Senior State District Judge. We extend a very special welcome to you, Judge. To get us started on today's conversation, I'm turning over the microphone to Fernando. Take it away.
Let's start at the very beginning. What are some of your memories from growing up and going to school, first in Hebbronville, Texas, and then to Laredo? What was that transition like?
Well, Hebbronville is a very small community. I think it was probably around 3,000 people. I had wonderful instructors when I was there. I spent my elementary years there and transitioned to Lamar. I visited the public library quite a bit. I think I must have read every book they had on the shelf. I used to read about a book a day. Life kind of got in the way of. I don't read as often as I'd like. I'd like to get back to that though. I listened to a lot of books on Audible. And then I went on to Lamar and then to Nixon. I graduated Nixon and went to the University of Texas.
And then you got a law degree.
I kind of rushed through my university years, graduated at 20, worked a year before I went to law school. So then I went to St. Mary's in San Antonio, got a law degree, came back to Laredo.
Can you tell us about your family?
About my family, I have boxes of material. Just start chronologically organizing all of that material. I even have boxes on my husband's family. When I got appointed by Governor Mark White, I got claimed by not just Laredo, Webb County, but also LaSalle and Jim Hogg, Zapata, Nuevo Laredo. So the family basically is centered in South Texas.
Can you tell us people that helped you become who you are?
Well, I think I had very strong grandmothers and my mother and my father. They were all very strong and influential in making sure that I went on to higher education. It really wasn't an option. It was just a given. The idea, the problem was trying to figure out how you did all that. But it was just a given that you were going to go on to college.
Tony?
Well, first of all, Judge, thank you so much for being with us. We've known each other for a long time. As friends, sometimes we like to poke fun at each other, but now we're doing this in a more serious vein. So I really thank you for indulging us in this podcast. Why did you choose the legal profession and then to become a member of the judiciary? What was it about these disciplines that motivated you, inspired you to join and become top of your profession?
I think I read a book about a female lawyer when I was 14, and it looked interesting. I went on in high school to become editor of the newspaper, and I really had in mind that I was going to go to law school. I started off at the university with a double major in accounting and journalism. I eventually abandoned journalism, but my original dream had been to be a world traveled news correspondent. So when you approached me and told me what you all were doing, I was so excited. This is really fun. I imagine to go out and interview people.
Communicating the value of preparation, particularly of formal education, and the paths that you chose required a substantial amount of commitment, financial, time, emotional, family support, because we're talking undergrad school and doing an accounting degree. We're talking about law school and doing a Juris Doctor degree. What do you see as the preparation that is needed to undertake these professional commitments? And what is the importance of formal education today when everybody wants to do online courses and DIY type certifications?
It's funny that you asked that. I had a conversation with a cousin that I hadn't seen or spoken with her for a couple of decades, but a death in the family kind of brought about that conversation last night. I was kind of sad at something she said. And I think it's representative of a lot of young people that one of her sons was thinking about not going to college, that it really wasn't necessary anymore. And I thought that was kind of sad. One of the regrets that I have is that I rushed through undergraduate degree. I worked my way through undergraduate school, I worked my way through law school, and I borrowed money. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this tremendous amount of money that I have to pay back. I just need to kind of get through this. Instead of staying the 4 years, I got out in 3. That was one of my regrets. But one of the wonderful things about going to a university and actually is that interacting with people of different areas of the country, different areas of the world, listening to what they have to say and recognizing that everybody has different perspectives. It's valuable to understand, what is outside of Laredo.
And that is, now that you have established yourself with a stellar reputation as a community leader, as a jurist, as a role model for women and judges and lawyers, and now a mediator, what got you through that? What was the mantra? What was the code? What was the philosophical guidance that you used to be able to succeed at the level that you have?
Well, you start at home and you look at your parents and how they conduct themselves and your other relatives and friends, and you realize that there is truly a moral compass to recognize and try to follow. I remember as a young judge, we went to baby judges school, as they call it. Justice Pope spoke to us informally at a dinner, and he told a story about a judge in South Texas that got defeated because he didn't make a decision that was popular with a particular group that had a very powerful lobby. And so he was defeated. But that kind of stuck with me, is that it was important to make the right decisions without worrying about the political cost.
And that's a nice transition, I think, Fernando, to your follow up question.
I'd like to know that as a female judge, were there unique expectations, perhaps challenges or even advantages that you felt you had to navigate?
Oh, definitely. I also had the age factor. I had just turned 30 when I got appointed. You're not just looking at a female, which there's never been, a Hispanic one in Texas or in Laredo, but you're also young and have different ideas. That was difficult to navigate. I went to my first judicial conference annual meeting, and I'm going down an escalator to get to where you register. And there's this very elderly judge coming up the escalator, and we're just kind of meeting sort of 2 or 3 feet away. And he looks at me and he looks at my name tag and he says, "Now, and whose wife are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not married." You know, and you could see that he could not figure out what that meant. You know,
Why were you there?
and I don't know if Tony remembers this, but he spoke when I got sworn in. And he said that the alternative to having a young female judge was an old male judge. I was like, And so there were those challenges. I think that women judges still have challenges. There's still an unspoken bias there, although you do have a very fair representation now on the bench.
Looking back at your time on the bench, if you had to pinpoint one area, whether it was family law or sentencing or complex business disputes, what was the most emotionally or intellectually difficult type of case to manage, and why?
Well, I think all cases have their challenges. If you look at a case having to do with child abuse or a criminal case having to do with abuse of a child, those are very difficult. Juvenile cases are very difficult as well. There's a lack of resources. It's much better now, but it's still not adequate. And then again, there are cases that involve parties that might pose some political challenges as well. So they're all in some way very challenging.
Before this podcast, I did not know what ADR stood for, but now I do. It's Alternative Dispute Resolution. So tell us, what was the driving force behind you and Judge Raul Vasquez in establishing South Texas ADR Center?
Well, it was Raul Vasquez's idea. He retired after 30 years in service, 2 years before I did. He started very young. First, he was on the Justice of the Peace Court, and then he went to the county court, and then finally to the district court level. And every time he was in the courthouse, he'd come knock on my door and say, "Come on, join me. Let's go do this." And so he was basically the driving force. And I'm really kind of glad I did it. But I kept telling him, I really like my job. So the balance between that is that I serve as a visiting judge still and help judges when they need help. I know I appreciated it when I needed somebody to relieve me because of personal commitments to help with the caseload while I was off a couple of days or so.
And for our listeners, what's a fundamental difference between going to court and choosing to go mediation route?
Well, I think the primary reason is that you're involved in the decision. It's not a judge making the decision. It's not a jury. It's, you, the primary personal party to the case that has an interest in it, makes the decision. And so you kind of buy into the process or the solution and you accept it. It's not something that's being ruled on from the bench or from a jury verdict.
How do you personally define success at the mediation table? Is it the goal always to have a handshake and a full settlement, or are there other outcomes that you work towards to achieve or make a session successful?
I once heard a speaker at a presentation say that there was no mediation that was not successful. And I kind of scratched my head. And what he said is that even when there's not a settlement, there's some movement. And so there's some hope for a settlement coming later on past that mediation. I know I continue to work on cases where there isn't a full settlement, and sometimes it's a partial settlement and only one issue is left for a judge to decide. Um, and then there's all kinds of different arbitrations and mediations that are available as well. So sometimes it's not just a straight mediation, it's a mediation and an arbitration or a combination thereof. So
Many cases go to mediation and don't settle, so they have to go to court.
going back to what that speaker said, a lot of times there may not be a settlement at the mediation, but again, you've moved the goalpost, and sometimes you're still involved in relaying offers later on, or there is a call for a second mediation, or again, the parties get closer, the gap has gotten smaller, it's easier to settle before you go to trial. There's a very small percentage of cases that actually go to trial, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's expensive to get a case ready for trial. You're talking about discovery, depositions, expert witnesses that you have to prepare, and all of that costs a lot of money. So sometimes what you might get from a jury verdict might be more, but it might cost you more in expenses. I'm kind of a bottom line person.
Have you ever had a case where you had buyer's remorse? I mean, they've settled and now they say, why did I do it this way? And do they have a recourse?
When you reach an agreement, it's enforceable. We changed the snacks that we were providing at our mediation center because one person said that the fact that they had pan dulce made their blood sugar drop or rise, and it might have affected their judgment. But no, once you sign a settlement agreement, you go over it with them and advise them that it will be binding, and it's all in writing, and you go through it.
Tony?
Before we leave the subject of mediation, I want to bring us up to speed to the world of artificial intelligence. And I want to know about the impact that the changes in technology and AI are having or will have on the various expectations of the participants in the various ADR processes, not just mediations, but obviously arbitrations, et cetera. What do you see as the issues involved when we bring post-pandemic technology and AI into play? People want to do things all online. They don't want to travel. How has this impacted your world in mediation?
Well, before the pandemic, I had never heard of Zoom, but I will credit the Office of Court Administration. They had us up and running within a couple of weeks on Zoom because all of the court proceedings continued, but they were all on Zoom. And we transitioned, we actually had a Zoom account before the Office of Court Administration had all the judges up and running, and we started doing our mediations on Zoom. I had conducted a mediation right before we got shut down, and that one did not settle at the mediation, but there were a lot of people very nervous. It was held in San Antonio, but we had people from all over Texas there, and they were very nervous about this new disease. I don't know if that factored into it, but I continued to work that mediation while we were on the pandemic, and it settled eventually before courts were operational. I find that mediations on Zoom are very effective, and I would say probably 95% of them that I do are still on Zoom. A few cases where people are extremely emotionally involved in the aspects of the litigation, the lawyers find that it is helpful to have an in-person mediation.
I think the world of technology, if it's a tool, is certainly going to enhance the outcome and the process, but it probably has some potential abuses built in. I'd like to explore that with you for our lay audience. This is not a continuing legal education seminar or education seminar for mediators, but what is the impact of the online environment and now the artificial intelligence tool on the ethics that enter into the mediation, arbitration, mini trial, etc.?
Well, obviously, I'm not an expert at the artificial intelligence, but change is inevitable and sometimes change is uncomfortable. So I'm obviously on a beginning of a learning curve on chat GPT and all of that, artificial intelligence. But it is a topic that is addressed at mediation and arbitration and judicial education courses constantly now. There is a concern about privacy issues and also about accuracy. And so while it is going to be an essential part of everyone's life and practice, you have to be the individual that is in control and has safeguards and checks all the information to make sure it's correct. It's helpful in helping you draft documents, but it should not be used to make decisions. That information has to be checked because there are all kinds of malfunctions or hiccups, the hallucinations. People my age tend to be a little distrustful of AI, but it is here. And it is something we have to deal with and not be afraid of. We just have to sit down and learn how to manage it. I believe that there's different programs that are more reliable, and you have to become a little more adept at the questions that you ask and what you ask it to do.
Well, that brings us back to the basics and back to you. You have achieved many firsts and have been recognized in many different environments and venues for things you have done and continue to do. But how would you encapsulate your journey, your career, your life story in the context of the two or three things that really stand out for you?
Well, I think being a mother and a grandmother probably would definitely come under that realm. I hope that my service on the bench was in some way an inspiration to some. I know when I ran for office, I was getting up and at coffee shops at 6 in the morning, and then at lunchtime I would be walking. I found areas of Laredo that I didn't even know existed, and then I walked the streets. I was asked by my election committee to decline the request to visit schools. And I said, why? And they said, they don't vote. And I said, that's not important. What's important is that they understand that there's a possibility that they can do something like this. And it's really funny because there's a couple of attorneys that come up to me and they were in those groups that I was told I shouldn't go speak to. And one of them actually succeeded and took the bench of the 341st. She was at a boys and girls activity, and she says she remembers very clearly that I walked in. And then the other one, actually, I think they're not. I'm thinking there's three, yeah, but they all remember, and they were like in a third grade class or something, but they remembered. Maybe that's a legacy as well. There's a small scholarship at Texas A&M at Laredo, and hopefully that's helping as well. There's many activities and committees that I served on statewide as a judge, and hopefully some of those initiatives also leave some sort of legacy.
Fernando and I really congratulate you for being a mom and grandmom, the spouse, and I know the support of your family and their love was integral to your success. Being a role model is critical to the pathway for the future because hopefully some of our viewing audience will be from younger generations. It must be awfully difficult, Judge, just describing what you just went through elections and having to travel and commitments that you make to achieve a work life balance. But how do you achieve the work life balance so that you can spend more time with a spouse and daughters and granddaughters? What's the key to that? What's the recipe?
Well, I don't know that I've succeeded at that, but I'm still working at it. You just have to try to place your priorities in the right place.
I've got a question, Judge. What do you think people totally get wrong about judges?
I was dismayed when my daughter's curriculum changed and there wasn't civics in high school or in middle school. I loved my civics instructor, and I think it's very difficult to go about not quite understanding how our government works and our systems. A lot of people come up to me and say, "Can you fix my traffic ticket?" And instead of, I remember a district attorney used to say, "Sure," he took it and then he would tear it up and throw it in the trash can. you know, but that's not, I said, "No, you have to commit a murder, do something like that, and then we can talk." Unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand our system of government. They don't understand exactly what we do. In Texas, judges are tasked with so many more duties than in other states. The legislature, in their wisdom, has set us up as a check and balance on the counties. And so we hire and fire the probation people, the juvenile probation people. We run an alternative school. We hire and fire the purchasing agent and the auditor. And so there's a lot of things that we do that have nothing to do with actually sitting on the bench. We also have to do that as well. So there's a lot of things that we're doing that they don't have a clear understanding of what we're doing.
Tell us something most people wouldn't guess about you.
Oh, okay. I'm an introvert, I think. On all of those tests they give you, it's funny because it's changed a little bit because they can get very specific. But on the introvert scale, I score 1 towards the extrovert. That's just really close. I mean, nobody would guess that this person that has run for office and, maybe they've met me, they would never guess that I was an introvert. I also took a test at a leadership institute that I went to, and it showed that I had a perfect politician profile. And when we were debriefed by the psychologists that interpreted all of our exams and who are also studying us through the exercises that we did throughout the week, they said that I had a perfect politician profile. And I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "Well, you are perfectly fine in a room of 5,000 people, but you would rather be in a room with 6. Most people would not peg me as an introvert."
Very interesting. Tony?
We have a little bit of time, Judge. Can I engage you in just one more topic?
Okay.
You've hit the ball out of the field every time on our discussions here. Maybe this one will stretch you a little bit in a different direction. Now that you've accomplished and had this journey in your career, been blessed with a great family, and you look back, what would you have done differently if you had heard someone give you the advice that now you give to others?
It's interesting because I was just speaking with another family member who's getting ready to fill out college applications. And I get so excited when kids ask me to write a letter recommendation for them. So I start asking them about their interests so I can prepare a well-reasoned, targeted letter recommendation. It's so exciting that there's so many different opportunities for these kids now. You can get, a dual master's and a law degree in all different areas and locations, and there's just so much for them. So it's exciting. I know I was encouraged by one of the professors at UT to apply for law school out of state, and I didn't do that. I think I've mentioned to you one of the regrets I have is that I rushed through undergraduate. But then again, that may have been a blessing too, so you just never really know. I do regret not having stayed the 4 years, but I had enough credits and I just kind of wanted to stop the expenses. I didn't realize that that was not going to be much. What we paid for education way back in our day is just so little compared to what they're facing now. But I do want to tell students or young people that, where there's a will, there is a way. I worked through undergraduate, I worked through law school, I borrowed money. I was never afraid to go and ask for things either. We had to make a presentation in class. It seemed logical to call up Sarah Weddington and say, "Can you come down and be on a panel?" I could say yes, and I really didn't worry about things. I was going to go to school, go to law school, and figure it out. Now I see a lot of young people that are too focused on obstacles or problems as opposed to solving them and getting through. I think it's really exciting, all the different opportunities that kids have. It's mind-boggling. Now they say that the average person will change careers 6 or 7 times in their lifetime. I think the only reason I haven't changed my career is because it's evolved so much. It keeps changing and we keep having to learn. Somebody said, "You mean you're still going to CLE?" I said, "Oh yeah, I still go to CLE. I still go to school." One of my granddaughters said, "You're still going to school?" I said, "All the time." Because you have to keep relearning or rethinking things.
I think what you're sharing with us is be prepared for changes in your life, external, internal. Don't let the challenge overwhelm you. It is the message that our podcast likes to leave with our audience. Is there anything that you would like to ask us or say before we sign off?
Well, I think this is a wonderful thing that you're doing. It's all about Laredo, right? I know that many times when I traveled up to Austin, Washington, it was really because we wanted to bring back something for Laredo. I've always said this, that Laredo has a tremendous wealth, and that's in its people. I'd go to Austin and watch somebody make a presentation and then look at the budget, and we paid that person to prepare that presentation. In Laredo, people were doing that all the time on a volunteer basis. So there's a wealth of treasure in Laredo in its population. And I'm glad that you're exploring this. We all have a wonderful family history and wonderful culture. Thank you.
And so we conclude today's episode 5 of Podcast Laredo, by expressing our gratitude to you, our audience, for making this inaugural 2025 season such an enjoyable adventure for both Fernando and myself. As today's conversation is taking place in early December, we also want to extend our best wishes for a safe, healthy, and happy holiday season to all of you. To our distinguished guest, Judge Elma Salinas Ender, we salute you for all you have done to advance the rule of law. You are a respected jurist. You have a long-standing record of service. It speaks for itself. Your dedication, your hard work, the examples that you set for peers, colleagues, and those who follow is truly remarkable. So thank you for being with us today, Judge Ender, from Fernando and myself.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I admire you both. Known you for many, many years. you.